till there is no more. In Jesus' name we pray, amen and amen. From the Old Testament book of Deuteronomy chapter 7, those of us that are physically able, we want to stand in honor for the reading of God's holy and divine word. For his word, you know, it is holy. He is a holy God, and it's his word. Deuteronomy chapter 7, 6 verses that I want to read in your hearing here on today. It says, when the Lord your God brings you into the land which you go to possess, and has cast out many nations before you, the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than you. And when the Lord your God delivers them over to you, you shall conquer them and utterly destroy them. You shall make no covenant with them, nor show mercy to them, nor shall you make marriages with them. You shall not give your daughter to their son, nor take their daughter for your son. For they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. So the anger of the Lord will be aroused against you and destroy you suddenly. But thus you shall deal with them. You shall destroy their altars and break down their sacred pillars and cut down their wooden images and burn their carved images with fire. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all the peoples of the face of the earth. Listen at that 6th verse again. Talk about serving with passion. Listen to the passion of God for his people. For you are a holy people to the Lord. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all the peoples on the face of the earth. I want to talk to you briefly today from this topic, when the favor of God shows up in your life. When the favor of God shows up in your life. Let me hear you in getting this message into the atmosphere today by repeating its topic after me. Let me hear you shout out, when the favor of God shows up in your life. Again, let me hear you shout out, when the favor of God shows up in your life. One more time for the Holy Trinity, and this time, why don't you minister to yourself? Let me hear you shout out, when the favor of God shows up in my life. Now, if you believe that you're favored of God, why don't you put those blessed hands together and give the Lord some praise. There is this story about this wealthy man and his son who loved to collect fine works of art. They had everything in their collection, from Picasso to Raphael. They would often sit together and they would admire these great works of art. However, when the Vietnam conflict came about, the son enlisted and he went and fought in the Vietnam War. His son was very courageous, and he wound up dying in the battle when he rescued another soldier. And the father, he was notified, and he grieved for his son dearly. About a month later, there was a knock at his door, and there was a young man that stood at the door with a large package in his hand, and he said to him, "Sir, you don't know me, but I am the soldier for whom your son gave his life. He saved many lives on that day, and he was carrying me to safety off of the battlefield when the bullet struck him in the heart and he died instantly. Your son often talked about you, and he talked about how the both of you had a love for art. And I have this gift for you. I'm not much of an artist, but I think your son would have wanted you to have this." The father, he took and he opened up the package, and it was a portrait of his son that was painted by this young man whose life he had saved. The father, he began to marvel in awe at how the soldier had captured the personality of his son in the painting. And he was so drawn to the eyes that his own eyes began to well up with tears. He began to thank the young man, and he offered to pay him for the picture. But the young man said, "No, sir, you could never give me any amount of money to repay me for what your son has done for me." He said to the father, he says, "This is a gift." The father took it. He hung that painting above the mantle in his home. And every time visitors would come to his house, before he would even take them to see the Rembrandts, before he would take them to see the Van Goghs, before he would take him to see any of the fine pieces of art, he would show them the picture that was painted for him of his son. Time would go on and that man would die, and all of his great paintings were to be auctioned off. And many influential people, they gathered excited about seeing these great paintings and having the opportunity to purchase one of these great paintings to add to their own personal collection. And on the platform sat the painting of his son. The auctioneer, he pounded his gavel and he said, "We will start the auction off by taking a bid on this picture of the father's son. Who in this crowd will bid for the picture?" There was silence, and a voice in the back, he shouted out loudly and said, "We want the famous painting, skip this one." But the auctioneer, he persisted. "Will someone bid for this painting? Who will start the bidding at $100? Anyone will bid for $200. Again, another angry voice shouted out from the crowd and said, "We did not come to see this painting. We came to see the Van Goghs. We came to see the Rembrandts. Get on with the real bids." But still the auctioneer, he kept on auctioning off the picture of the son, and he says, "The son, the son, the son. Who will take the son?" Finally, there was a voice that came from the back of the dark room, and it was the longtime gardener who took care of the lawn for the father and the son. Being a poor man, he said, "I'll buy that painting for $10. The auctioneer, he said, "We have $10. Is there anyone that will bid $20? And someone yelled out, "Give it to him for $10. Let's see the master paintings." He says, $10 is the bid. Anybody has $20. The crowd became angry, and they didn't want the picture of the son. And they said there were more worthy investments for us to invest in. The auctioneer, he began to pound his gavel. He said, "Going once." He said, "Going twice." He said, "Sold for $10. A man sitting on the second row said, "Finally, now let's get on to the collection." The auctioneer, he then laid down his gavel and he said, "I'm sorry, but the auction is over." They began to ask questions. What about the paintings? What about the Van Goghs? What about the Rembrandts? What about the other paintings? What do you mean that the auction is over? He said, "I'm sorry, but when I was called to conduct this auction, I was told a secret stipulation in the will. I was not to reveal this secret stipulation until this time. Only the painting of the son was to be auctioned, and whoever bought the painting of the son would inherit the entire estate, including all of the paintings." The moral of that story, brothers and sisters, is that when you have the son, you become favored and you have everything. It is in our text on today, brothers and sisters, that we see the favor of God falling upon the children of God, falling upon the children of Israel, because they had God in their lives. And when you are faithful to God, hear me out, when you are faithful to God, He will show you favor. When you are faithful to God, He will show you favor. And when you're faithful to Him, His favor, it will show up in your life. Three simple things I want to lift up before you today, and I'm going to take my seat and we'll commune to church. Three simple things that I want to share with you today. When the favor of God shows up in your life, first of all, the insurmountable becomes surmountable. When the favor of God shows up in your life, the insurmountable becomes surmountable. It is in our text that we come across the children of Israel. They are now about to enter into the promised land. The Bible teaches us when one goes goes back into the book of Numbers, the Bible teaches us that God, he had promised them the promised land. But unfortunately, when the spies came back, 10 came back with a negative report, 2 came back with a favorable report, that the people, they took the negative report and they chose to choose the people's word over God's word, and they did not enter into the promised land. Well, God, he had given them their death sentence, and he told them that you will not enter into the promised land. You will wander in the wilderness for 40 years. It was an 11-day journey, and an 11-day journey took them 40 years to now get in. It was because they refused, they rebelled, and because they complained about God. Can I tell you and put this in parenthetically, that the favor of God will not come in your life if you are rebelling against God. The favor of God will not fall upon your life if you are complaining, brothers and sisters. But you must learn in your life to not rebel against God, not try to get God to fit on your agenda, but you have to learn how to conform to his agenda. If you want to be blessed of the Lord, you can't rebel against him and do things your way and have it your way, but you must learn how to say, nevertheless, Lord, not my will, but let your will be done. And then you got to learn how not to complain. You got to learn how to stop complaining. You got to learn how to stop complaining when the rain falls in your life. Don't complain about the rain falling in your life. Maybe God is trying to wipe something away, or perhaps trying to clear your eyes so that you might see people clearly, see things clearly. No, God, I don't want pain, and no, I don't like feeling in pain, but God, I thank you for the pain, and I thank you for the problem. Why do I thank him? I thank him because if I never had any problems in my life, then I would not know that my God could solve them. If I did not get hurt in my life, I would not know that my God could heal. If I did not have my heart broken, then I would not have known that God is the mender of heart. If I did not get sick in my life, then I would have never known that God can heal sickness. If I never got fired from a job, I would have never known that God can get me another job. If I would have never had people to walk out of my life, then I would have never known that God was just making room for real people to come in my life. And I wonder in here today, is there anybody in here that'll say that I will not complain? I don't care if the rain falls. I don't care if I got troubles in my life, struggles in my life, pain in my body. I will not open up my mouth and complain, but I'll learn how to thank God. At least I'm alive, and as long as he is still on the throne, I know everything is going to be all right.